Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Abu Taib from Golf Business Technology, the leading technology news platform dedicated to the world of golf. Today, we are presenting Metolius Golf, Untapped Potential, how operators use their internal business data to drive efficiency, customer engagement, and profitability, presented by Ross Liggett from Metolius Golf. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available after the webinar concludes on the Golf Business Technology platform. Participants will be automatically muted and cameras turned off. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in the Q&A panel. The questions will then be answered at the end of the presentation. Now, without further delay, we will turn the time over to Ross. Ross?
Well, thanks, Boo. Thanks for having me here, and thanks to everyone for coming and participating in this webinar. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about maybe one of the more drier subjects out there, but hopefully we can make it a little bit more exciting. But talking about how you can use the data that's generated by your own systems to have a better, more efficient operation. And we're going to start with where you go get the data all the way through to using that data to run your business. We're going to cover throughout the presentation today. We're first going to start by talking about what data sources are important to you and what data sources are widely used in the golf industry and that are valuable to help run your business. What insights are generated from those systems and how to use those. How to adopt a data-driven decision-making culture at your golf course or club, and how to adopt a continuous improvement cycle to improve your operating efficiency, revenue, customer engagement, employee satisfaction continuously over time. And then we're going to close out by having a very quick example of one of these sort of practices in action and how we can actually use this data in practice without any fancy tools to improve results at a golf course. So with that, we'll jump right into it. We've got this quote here, which I thought was appropriate given a lot of our audience is on the other side of the pond, so to speak, as me, but a quote from Sherlock Holmes here, that it's a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. And that's really the premise that I've used to approach the golf industry when I worked in golf operations. And it is the reason why we started Metolius in the first place, to make it easier for the golf industry to make data-driven decisions. So the first thing that we need to talk about when it comes to your own internal data is how much of it there is. So this is a quote from Eric Schmidt, who was the longtime CEO of Google. And he says, or noted, that there were 5 exabytes of information created between the beginning of time and 2023. And we now create that much information every 2 days. And this quote's a little bit old, so I bet we probably create that much information in a day at this point in time. So there is a massive volume of data out there in the world that didn't exist. And really, it's a result of our transition to sort of cloud computing and cloud applications. And so if we look at the systems that are widely utilized in the golf industry, we know at this point that most of those systems are now in the cloud. Or making their way there. And when a system goes into the cloud, it just by nature of that transition generates tons of data. And that data you can leverage to run your business. And it's not just the tee sheet and the point of sale, though we are going to focus on those because they're the core of your first party data. There are lots of other systems creating lots of other data that's important to you. So this is kind of a quick list of what we think is important. And these kind of align with the standard data integrations that we build at our company. So the yellow section on the left here, these are your marketing sources, right? So you need to be getting data from your email system to understand what engagement with your email communication looks like and make sure that you're delivering messages, not bouncing, not restricted for some reason, right? You have your website data, which is the most important marketing data source. A lot of folks will like to choose email or social media and digital advertising as the main source for marketing, but the only place that people can transact with you on the internet is via your website. So if you're doing a lot of email marketing, the strategy is to drive people to the website. If you're doing a lot of social media or digital advertising, you're still driving people to your website. So your website is the source of truth for your digital marketing data. These other two are important, but not as important as the website. Then we kind of get into your business operations systems here. So you have your T-sheet or reservation system. You have your point of sale where you actually process transactions. A lot of times those are connected or the same platform. You have your customer feedback system where you're understanding what customers are saying about you, asking them for feedback, etc. And then you have your CRM, which would be used to manage your sales pipeline for memberships or banquet events or weddings or any of those bigger ticket items where you have a true sales process with a sales manager, prospect, and contracts and all that sort of good stuff. Then we go to your kind of administrative system. So you've got an accounting or ERP system that produces your financial statements. You've got some sort of accounts payable tool, and then you have a timekeeping HR and payroll system as well. And then going over here in this purple column, these are e-commerce platforms. So your online store, which is probably embedded into your website, is its own platform with its own data, as is your booking engine, which is the widget on your website or page on your website that allows people to book into your T-sheet or reservation system. So everything here and probably several more that you're using are really important data sources for you to understand, and if possible, get the data out of those systems so that you can then use it to make good decisions. So this is where we get into the world of data engineering and data warehousing. So I'm sure everybody on this call has experienced a moment when you wanted to get a specific metric and you had to log into system A and pull a report and then pull another report and then maybe log into system B and pull a report and another report and then copy that data into some sort of spreadsheet and then perform some sort of analysis in the spreadsheet, combining things or doing a VLOOKUP or a SUMIF or a COUNTIF. And it's sort of a long, arduous process to get you this one metric. Well, this concept of data engineering and warehousing is basically automatically doing those things. So we have our list of data sources over here. And in a perfect world, you would have a data pipeline that would look something like this, where you have a data engineering component where a data engineer has found a way to access the information from all of these sources and load it into a warehouse each night so that you have a copy of the source system in a database that you control. That database, we like to call a data warehouse because it's dealing with unstructured data or data from different sources, and it's pulling that out and storing the raw data. From there, you can then perform what's called ETL or ELT if you want to, which is essentially all of that math you were doing in Microsoft Excel, we can do programmatically. And so what a data pipeline like this looks like is the system goes and gets the data, stores the raw data, performs math on it, and then returns you the results automatically every single day so that you don't have to do any mashing up to figure out what your food and beverage per round is, or what your rev par is, or what your payroll percent of revenue is. The system is doing that for you overnight. This is a high level sort of example. This is what my company does. It doesn't have to be extremely expensive, but you don't have to have a system like this to be a data-driven organization. But you have to have some semblance of metrics that you can track over time so that you can understand if you're improving. So now we're going to kind of jump into what metrics are actually important for you to evaluate at your facility. So we're going to start on the operations side of the business, and we're going to focus on metrics. And so metrics and key performance indicators are different things. Metrics are sort of point in time measurements of a specific business area. KPIs are more complex. So we have another page of KPIs, but these are some metrics that you should think about running. And some of them are probably pretty basic, right? Like the first one is revenue. And I think probably everyone on this call knows that revenue is an important a metric to understand, but where it becomes important is the amount of dimensions that are attached to those metrics. So this is where high resolution data is really important. It's one thing to know your revenue for a day. It's another thing to know your revenue and be able to split it by the time and the department that that revenue occurred in and the category that that revenue occurred in and the item that was purchased for that revenue and the customer who purchased that revenue. So these are called dimensions, and they're basically attributes that describe data. And so we've listed some dimensions that are important in each one of these areas. So you have rounds. You want to be able to break that down by the booking channel, customer type, round type, day and time. You have your payroll data, so you want to be able to break that down by day, time, and the business area or GL account. You have playable hours. So you want to understand what the weather was like by time, business area, classification. Your customer feedback data is very important. Sales pipeline data. How many leads do you have? How many deals do you have? How much business do you have on the books? These are all metrics that are very important for you to monitor on a regular basis so that you can understand all these different aspects of your business. And you might notice that these are kind of aligned with the key things that you would look at. So we have some sort of traffic information with the rounds. We have some revenue information. We have payroll information. We have customer feedback information. And we have sales pipeline, which is kind of forecasting. So if you're measuring these, you have a pretty good idea where your business is. And this next page is an example. Now, again, this is one of our dashboards, probably a little higher level use case of what a revenue dashboard might look like. But you can see in the way that this dashboard has been constructed, it allows you to interact with the data and quickly get to the insight that you're looking for. And so I'm not saying everybody needs to have a dashboard like this, but some of the metrics on here and the KPIs are pretty relevant. So I'm just going to go through this really quickly. So we have a headline metric here, total sales, quantity of items, that's a metric. Average item is a key performance indicator because we are aggregating things together and creating a more advanced metric. Average receipt also is a key performance indicator, as is average items per receipt. We can see how our revenue tracked over time, and we can see how that revenue fell by department or item or customer. And then we have all of these filters, AKA dimensions, or things that can describe the data that allow us to slice and dice down this data. So if you're trying to build a revenue type dashboard, think about this sort of structure where you have really high granular data, you have the ability to do lots of slicing and dicing, and you're visualizing both metrics and key performance indicators. Now we're going to jump into more detailed key performance indicators that you might utilize to evaluate your golf operation. So revenue per visit. This is also known as basket size, which is basically how much money does someone spend when they show up on site. But this is a great source of understanding how your customers are using your facility. And it's a great barometer to how your customers are feeling, because if they're visiting just as much but spending less, that tells you a story. Or if they're visiting less and spending more, that's also telling you a different story. We also have utilization, which is the percentage of your tee times that are being booked or used, depending on how you want to use it. And we have payroll percent of revenue. So certainly you have some sort of budget system where you're budgeting a certain amount of payroll to align with a certain business level, and you can develop a percentage for that. In food and beverage, it should be around 25%. In golf operations, it can vary widely depending on your service delivery model. But payroll percent of revenue is very important. Weather adjusted revenue per available round. So revenue per available round tells you how much you're collecting for every round of golf you produce, whether it was reserved or not. And we want to bring weather into that as well, so that we only look at the good weather hours, because the bad weather hours are just bad data and they're throwing off our numbers. We've also got Net Promoter Score, which is a very specific customer feedback evaluation that has a fancy formula, which I'm not going to attempt to describe today. And then we also have cost per acquisition, which would be how much does it cost for you to acquire a new customer? And this transitions over into the marketing world, but we thought it was important to keep in the operational metrics as well, because it does use data coming from both sides, both marketing and data. So I'm going to pop over to one of our rounds dashboards, which has a lot of key performance indicators in it. So again, you don't need all of this stuff to get a good understanding of how your tee sheet's performing, but there's probably some information here that might be helpful for you to look at. So we have, obviously, total rounds here is important. Our utilization percentage, not factoring weather, and then also a utilization that does take into account weather. So for us, this weather adjusted utilization throws out any time that the weather was really bad and gives us utilization just for playable hours. On the RevPAR side of things, we have the same deal. So we have RevPAR and then a weather adjusted RevPAR number. Repeat some green fee and cart fee metrics. And then our favorite metric is fees per weather adjusted capacity hour. What this is saying is for every hour that the weather's good, we're collecting $488 in green fees. So if this number is going up, we're doing a good job of monetizing our tee sheet. If this number is going down, we're not doing a good job of monetizing our tee sheet. We need to figure out why, whether that's customer service, course conditions, pricing, Could be all kinds of reasons why we're not monetizing our T-sheet. And then we have the ability to look at all of these aggregated metrics by hour of day and day of week, which I would strongly suggest anybody who's taking on a project like this think about, because you want to be able to dial into very specific increments of your T-sheet to offer very specific products to very specific customers. Moving over to the marketing side of the world, which is also very important, maybe more important. I am a marketing guy, so this is where my heart is combining of operational metrics and marketing metrics. But here are some measurements that we can take from the world of marketing. So on the website side and social media side, sessions, users, impressions are all kind of similar metrics. On a website, a session is every time someone loaded a page, whereas a user is just that one person. So one user can have multiple sessions in any given day. An impression is more of a outbound marketing type metric where it's showing how many times did someone have eyeballs on this piece of information that we gave them. Of course, clicks is important. So how many people said, yes, I want to click that call to action and made their way over to your website. Cost for any advertising platform is also very important to understand how much you're spending. And then you can see we have opens here for email with a big red line through it. And so I'm going to just briefly get on my soapbox here and just say to everybody, if you are measuring open rate, if you're using open rate as a key performance indicator for your email, you should develop a new metric to understand what you're trying to measure, that engagement rate that you're trying to measure. Because about 2 years ago, Apple introduced something called Apple Mail Privacy Protection. And Apple Mail Privacy Protection automatically opens any email you deliver to an Apple device. So if you're using open rate as your metric, it is including a bunch of opens that are not real. And more than 50% of users, at least in the US, open their email on an Apple device. Some of the better ESPs like MailChimp or ActiveCampaign have some solutions for this, but the fact is that open rate is no longer accurate because of these privacy decisions that Apple has made. And you should rely more on cost to click-through rate or click-to-open rate as your metrics to measure email engagement. And then, of course, you have to measure email sends and then delivery of those sends, so you can make sure that you're not getting too many bounces or unsubscribes, because those will cause your emails not to be delivered by the major ISPs. Get off my soapbox now. I hope that was helpful for anybody who didn't know about any of that Apple Mail Privacy Protection information. So here's an example of a social media dashboard. Again, one of our dashboards. You can get all of this information right out of Facebook if you want to. But the total reach, how many new fans do we have? How many times did we post? What are the locations and the age and gender of our page fans? All of our posts would be in there with captions and links. This is washed data because this is a demonstration. But you have all of the information that you need here for Facebook. But where the marketing data really becomes better is when we start to talk more about these KPIs. So what is the engagement rate of users when they land on our website? In other words, what percentage of users do something on our website before they leave? What is our cost to reach 1,000 people? That's what CPM stands for, the second metric here. And this is an unbelievably great metric because you can develop a CPM for Facebook ads, Google ads, and the direct mail that you did last week. And you can compare those CPMs against each other, and it is a great tool to measure if you should be allocating your marketing spend online versus offline. The click-through rate, or what percentage of people who saw what you published clicked on what you published. The cost per conversion, which would be how many people saw it versus how many people filled out a form, purchased something in your e-com store, booked a tea time, more specific actual revenue conversions. The unsubscribe rate of your email is extremely important for you to measure because the ISPs are now using unsubscribe rate to decide if you're a spam email server or not. And so if you're getting a really high unsubscribe rate, the big ESPs like Google, Yahoo, Outlook are going to stop delivering your messages to inboxes. And then last, conversion rate, or what percentage of people who saw something got all the way through to a purchase or a lead gen form or whatever conversion event we're tracking. So these are all sort of higher level calculated metrics that we can use. And in the context of Google Ads, here are some examples of how you might look at that. So How many impressions did we make is a metric, how many clicks, how many conversions, those are all metrics, but then we have lots of KPIs here. What's our click-through rate? What's our cost per individual click? What's our cost to reach 1,000 people? What's our cost per conversion? What's the percentage of our bounce rate? And then we have more data on actual ads all the way through here, including keywords and whatnot. So what does this all mean? Well, if you have easy access to data like this, if you have a schedule that you're reviewing this on a weekly or monthly basis, you're going to see if there's some smoke in your dashboard, and then you're going to be able to understand and dig in and figure out where the fire is. And the important part of this is developing a culture and a process to implement this on a daily basis at your facility. So becoming a data-driven organization is not easy. A lot of department heads are hesitant to have so much transparency into what's happening in their department, but that transparency really becomes a benefit when you give it to them in the form of a scorecard. So we like to use this analogy to golf. In golf, we keep score. It's how we know if we're getting better or not. We even have a giant handicap system that allows us to measure our improvement over time. Yet at the golf course, we have, generally speaking, no similar system like that. But by putting in a real-time, automatically updated business intelligence dashboard, aka a scoreboard for your business or scorecard for your business, everybody on the team now understands how performance is going and how performance is improving. And that democratization of data, to get to our second item there, is what inspires department heads to own their own business unit and manage their own numbers. Next, if you're going to do this, you have to treat everything like a test. Don't be afraid to try things. Do it on a limited time basis, but make sure when you're trying something new, you're doing all the things you need to do to understand what happened after the fact. So that means taking the time to set up sales items, taking the time to set up UTM tagging, taking the time to publish a unique promo code in your booking engine, right? Do those things that will allow you to track the effectiveness of any change you make. Focus on data hygiene. Make sure your golf shop is putting everybody's name in the machine. Introduce a loyalty program so that your customers will want to scan their cards and you don't have to type anything in. But bad data in means bad metrics out. And then collaboration, competition, and incentives drive adoption. So talk about your data with your team. Create competitions between departments or incentivize performance on metrics that you're measuring in the dashboard. When you have those things squared away, you can adopt a continuous improvement approach where you all review this information on a weekly or monthly basis and you follow a continuous improvement cycle. So you start by measuring what's happening in the business. The metrics and the KPIs must be measured at regular intervals automatically and using the same baseline data. We have to analyze the data to understand what's happening, create a plan of action to address specific problems, and then execute. Then once we execute, we're back to measuring and we repeat the cycle. And if you do this on a monthly basis with your team, you will improve. So we're going to go really fast here because we're low on time. So T-sheet optimization example. This is a very simple example of how we use the data to grow revenue at a public facility. We'll talk about identifying the opportunity, selecting a solution, executing the campaign, and tracking results. So what we found was we had a big hole in the T-sheet Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We had strong demand in the morning, strong demand after that when we had a twilight rate that started at 2, but that spot in the middle of the T-sheet was very soft. At that time, our course conditions were excellent. We had strong demand for the price point at 2 p.m., and we also had a lot of complaints from our customers that we didn't offer a senior rate when all of the competitors in the market did. So what we did was we decided to offer a limited time senior promotion from 11 to 2 to see how it would do in the sheet. And the way that we're going to measure the results of this is to use the KPIs that we just talked about a minute ago. So you can see these are kind of our results here and how things were pretty soft prior to launching this. And so then we executed this. We put $0 behind this. We only posted it on social media and sent an email blast to our database. You can see we posted 5 times over the course of a month on social media. We sent 2 email blasts. We had some graphics, all that sort of good stuff. We also put it on the smart screens in the clubhouse. And we had a couple other promotions going at the same time. that hopefully compared with this. So what happened? In the 4 weeks after that we ran this promotion, we sold $8,000 worth of senior promotions in that window of T-sheet. The booking window of those promotions was double the average booking window for regular public players. And for that time period, our utilization of tee times increased 9%, our revenue per available round increased 71%, and our fees per playable hour increased 73%. So the promotion was highly successful for that window of time. But the next thing that we need to do is make sure that we didn't cannibalize the rest of our T-sheet. So we need to make sure that overall T-sheet was up too. Otherwise, we just pulled customers from other times and put them in this window. So looking at the overall T-sheet, weather was flat, so weather was not a factor. Overall rounds were up 18%, utilization was up 5%, and revenue per available round was up 17%. So this promotion did not cannibalize, and if it did cannibalize, we filled enough people in to make up for that cannibalization. The takeaways from this are it worked very well, and we're going to continue to do this and maybe even make it a standard rate. F&B revenue, though, is only up 5%, and golf revenue is only up 1%. Merchandise golf revenue is only up 1%, and the ride ratio was only 50%, so it was much lower than our normal ride ratio, and that means that these customers are price sensitive. And we need to understand that when we're working with them and pushing this out, that, hey, they're going to come for cheap golf between 11 and 2, and then that's it. And that's okay, because we're funneling them into a time period on the sheet where that works for us. And it's these small wins that you can repeat over and over with different periods of the T-sheet, different constituent groups. That's how you grow your T-sheet revenue over time by using data to grow. So that is about the end of our presentation here. I have a little bit of information here about Metolius and who we are. We do this data thing and we help people manage data and marketing strategy. And if you have any interest in talking to us, we'd love to talk to you about what might be challenging at your facility. But for now, let's go ahead and open this thing up to any questions and move forward.